I would like to talk about the short story The Murderer, which is written by the author Ray Bradbury. First, I would like to start off with a summary of the text. In the short story The Murderer, the psychiatrist sends into an interview with a man who goes by the name of the murderer. And as the psychiatrist is walking towards the interrogation room, there is a lot of noise coming from every other rooms he passes. Some of the noise is music, people talking into a variety of communication devices. The psychiatrist interacts with the variety of devices as he walks to the room, such as radios, buzzing lights, and phones. And when he finally enters the interrogation room, he notices that something is different than he was walking to the room. There is simply quiet inside the room, where the murderer is ready. The murderer anticipates the psychiatrist's question and explains that he has kicked the radio to death. The psychiatrist thinks that the man sitting in front of him is violent, but once again, the man anticipates the psychiatrist's thoughts and replies, "No, only two machines, that yak yak yak," quote on page 137 in line 51. The murderer has never harmed an actual living person, but he keeps destroying electronics that surrounds him. The psychiatrist begins to questioning this man, which is named Albert Brock. He questions him about all the crimes he had committed and why he has done so. Brock replies that before they can start, he must take care of one thing. He reaches over and takes the psychiatrist's wish and starts chewing it. The murderer despises the coincidence of white noise in the background of everything he does. The murderer begins to recount his crimes. He tells the psychiatrist that the first victim was his telephone, which he shot into the incinerator, and then he shot the television. The psychiatrist didn't ask him to slow down and try to explain why he did this, hoping he could find the motive the murderer had. The psychiatrist can't imagine how someone can hate technology as much as this man actually does. The psychiatrist begins then to wrap up the investigation, and he asks the murderer if he had felt any remorse about destroying these elements of technology, and the murderer has not. He says, actually, in a quote on page 143 in line 32, "I would do it all over again, so help me God." The murderer then ends the interview by raising the initially practical purposes of devices. However, he wants the psychiatrist of the potential ills of society dominated by technology. The psychiatrist then walks away, and as he walks out of the office, he reports the diagnosis that the man is disorientated but convivial. He actually thinks that he's fine, but a little insane because he's doing such things, and he feels pleased by doing it. Then I'll try to analyze the text a little further. When reading the title, the readers fast get the impression that it is about someone who calls himself a murderer because he kills different types of technological machines. So you get the feeling that it is somehow a crime story without being it in the same way. The story is constructed in different dialogues between the prisoner Brock and the psychiatrist. And the genre of the text is a short story, as mentioned before. The story is told by a third-person narrative, mostly limited to the psychiatrist. We hear mostly about him, but when it comes to the dialogues between the prisoner, Brock, and the psychiatrist, it is kind of both point of view we see in the dialogues. The readers are introduced to the main characters in the beginning of the text. We get to know that we have a psychiatrist because at the very beginning of the text we hear that he starts walking around the building, and we have the impression that it is a kind of office or something like that, because we are told that there are several persons involved doing something. He talks to his son in a quote on page 137 in line 2. "Yes, son, yes, I'm busy." This is also here where we get to know the setting, which is very unusual. There's different kinds of music in the office, and the people who's working there is singing and running. But a little bit later, it is washed away. We get to know the sword dance, for example, cross-pollination. And normally, when you talk about music, you don't say they sort of make babies. They almost make love to each other. They are playing with each other. So it is very different kinds of music. So music has an identity in itself, and it does something to the people who is listening to it. A lot of impression is out on the people. There is an image of this office he's walking in, which has to do with the music. It is called Beehive, which is like a hectic, busy, cramped. Much cursed by these different kinds of music, a lot of sound is there all the time. And then all of a sudden, when the psychiatrist enters the room where there is no music, the effect of this is that he's not pleased. He thinks, what on earth is wrong here? No sound. And actually, when the music isn't there, you get nervous, and feel scared, just like the young people experiences nowadays. The first thing we hear about the prisoner is that the prisoner is delivered to interview chamber 9, so the psychiatrist enters chamber 9, and there is no sound in there. And the explanation he gets from the prisoner is that he has killed the radio. He had also strangled the telephone, shot his television, killed the car radio with ice cream, and etc. The psychiatrist especially notices about Brock that he smiles, and the psychiatrist finds it strange or quite shocking that he smiles, and the smile is a shiny and warm smile. He is also quite shocked by the fact that he gets a kick out of destroying electronics. It makes an effect that it is a bit strange. No one compares music with sitting and talking with a prison. He becomes more aware of the silence when he enters chamber 9. In a quote on page 137 in line 35 to 36, it says, "The unusual silence, which was like the gathering of a storm, which the unusual silence which was like the gathering of a storm." And there's also a simile used in this line, because the simile is compared with the storm, which gives the effect of a really strange silence. In the short story, the protagonist is used as a villain by the society he lives in. He plunders and murders the technological devices around him, and he has been sent to a mental hospital for an evaluation. You can argue against if he really should be sent to a mental hospital, because it is not certain that he is a murderer when he never had killed a living person. It's a central thing in the story that we as readers don't actually know if he's truly crazy or just trying to change the society and the way the society acts. Today, many people use the social medias and spend a lot of time and money on electronics. It may be the reason why he's destroying all these devices, so we have to stop using them. Well, it can be the reason why he's doing it. He wants to live his life without being disturbed by the technological devices, and therefore he feels that he had to kill them to get rid of them. The short story is making the reader questioning about the fact if it actually are the society which is making a mistake, and whether we have become too ignorant to what actually is going on in our lives and what we actually do. Should we start being just like the murderer and throw all these technological devices away? The murderer is somehow pictured as a heroic figure in the story. He lives up to what he believes in, and he tries to stand out of the crowd and start doing something about it, even though he is sitting in an interrogation room with an interviewer and being interrogated about this. He still lives up to ideals and keep proving the society what he believes in. The bigger picture of what is happening in this society is that there are still many young people who use all their time on technological devices and don't do so much more than that. They probably don't get out of the house, has problem taking and being social with others. Have problem taking and being social with others. And even though they are on social medias, they are not social in a physical way with each other when they are communicating as well. And still, it is the overall theme. And sorry, and still, it is the overall theme, misfits. So you might say that the murderer, well, he was a misfit in the society that he was in. I interpret the story or genre as a kind of dystopia as well, and at least it was a kind of society where some people not would like to live in, and other society which was meant to be in the future somehow. But you have to have in mind that it was written in the 50s, so it's pretty old. But still, we get the idea that even though the devices may be a little old-fashioned and out of date, we still get the idea that all these technical devices, that's what makes up Earth the society. And then we have the criminal who really murders some of these electronic things, doesn't like it. So he's an example of a person who cannot live in this world anymore. We have read some other texts in class. You can put into perspective with the murderer. Brock is standing out of the crowd and goes against the majority. In The Unknown Citizen, written by W.H. Auden, confirms everybody, and especially one who had died. So it is an example of a confirmed society as well. And in Hands, written by Sherwood Anderson, is the main character afraid of his hands because he did not know when he touches the kids that it was illegal the way he did it, and he knows that he has done something. He knows that he has done something wrong, but he doesn't know what it is. He only knows that it has something to do with his hands, and he keeps hiding them in his pockets because he is ashamed of his behavior, which is opposite point in The Murderer, where Brock doesn't feel ashamed of his behavior, so there is a glaring contrast, you can say. But in The Murderer, Brock does things there isn't illegal, but still wrong, but he can't help it that the only solution for him is to kill the stuff that bothers him. So yeah, that was my presentation of the text The Murderer, and I hope you enjoyed listening to it.